Hey everybody, it's time to go over our monthly safety video for December. We're coming up, or maybe just had Christmas, so it's a good time to remember why we do this and why we be safe. We want to get home safe to our families. We want everybody else on the road to get safely wherever they are, and so safety is just such an important ingrained thing of what we do, and it's something that we always need to be thinking about, always need to be trying to improve on. There's a handful of topics I want to talk about today. The first one really involves you as the drivers. And that's just making sure you're being safe, especially around trailers. You're getting in and out of the trailer this time of year, where we're hauling, refrigerated freight, oftentimes those floors can be slippery. If you're walking from on ground that's slippery into a trailer that's also slippery, that can make things even worse. So be extra careful when you're doing that. Opening and closing the trailer doors can be dangerous, especially if it's, oh man, let me start that one over again. Burping right in the middle of it. Hey everybody, it's time for our monthly safety video for December. We probably just came through Christmas, so hopefully everybody had a really good Christmas, and it's a great time to remember why we do this. Safety is such an important thing in what we do. It's important that we all get home safely, that the general public driving on the roads gets to wherever they're going safely. So it's important that we're constantly thinking about safety and trying to get better at it. Today I've got a handful of topics I want to talk about. The first one really involves you as the driver, and that's making sure you're safe even when the truck is parked, especially around trailers. Reefers can be especially dangerous. If you're getting in and out of a reefer trailer, the reefer floor can be wet. If it's wintertime and the ground outside is wet, and then so your shoes are wet before you're even getting in there, that can be especially dangerous. So you got to be extra careful climbing in and around reefer trailers. Now, opening and closing the doors can also be dangerous, especially if it's windy. If there's winds out there, you got to be extra careful opening it. Sometimes that wind can catch that door just right and fling it open or fling it closed. And you don't want to be anywhere near an area where you can get a finger or a limb pinch. So, be careful with that. Pulling even just fifth wheel pins. When you're pulling the pin, it's always best to have one of those pin pullers. The more you stretch out and reach, the more likely you are to pull a muscle or to hurt something. So, be careful around your trailers. We've already talked a little bit about winter driving conditions this year, but I'll probably continue to broach the subject because there's just so many topics with that. It's that time of the year. It can be very dangerous, so we've got to be careful. Whenever you're driving in any kind of winter condition, it's always best, one, you've got to stay under the speed limit, or not go over the speed limit, and two, it's more important than ever to stay 2 to 3 miles an hour under the speed of traffic. As a semi truck, going slower than the traffic around you is one way to be defensive and to be safe, because that helps you maintain following distance. It helps make sure you're going to be able to stop in time. It helps in so many ways. So especially in the winter and winter driving conditions, that's incredibly critical. If you're running into a situation where you think you might need to stop because winter conditions are so bad that just reducing your speed or taking some of the other defensive measures that you typically take driving, and you need to stop the truck, don't hesitate to reach out to Nate and I and talk that through. It's never worth an accident to try to push the limits. Like if we have to be late for load, we have to be late for load. But there's also things we can do to kind of prevent that. In any situation, it's always best to try to get as many miles early on in a load route as you can, so that gives you flexibility and you don't feel rushed and you feel like you've got time to stop if you need to. But if you're in a situation where you feel like you need to stop, go ahead and stop. Give Nate and I a call. Let us, kind of walk through the situation with you and decide if we need to call the broker, if you're, going to be late. Again, being late is way better than putting yourself at risk for an accident. One of the big problem spots that we all know is I-80 in Wyoming. That becomes incredibly challenging this time of year. Between the high winds, the snow blowing across the roads, it gets shut down all the time. So, be cognizant of that. After I send out this video, I'm also going to send out an email with it where I'm going to talk or share some of the weather apps or sites that I use to track weather in Wyoming. One of them gives the current updates of road conditions along I-80. It'll tell you if there are restrictions due to wind or anything else. It'll tell you if something's closed down. You can even look at cameras to see what the road conditions are like, or look at sensors to see what wind speeds and temperatures are like. I think that's a phenomenal tool. The next one is one that just shows the entire country. You can also zoom in by region. You can look at what's coming up snow-wise, current conditions to several days forward. I think it's a really good predictive measure. I think it's one of the most accurate that I've found. You can also do the same for wind speeds, and you can kind of see what the trend is. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? And that can really help you with your timing of when you want to drive and how you want to drive. Right now we've some of the loads, a good chunk of the loads that we get out of Kansas City that bring us across I-80 on Wyoming are extra light. Most of those loads put you just to barely above 45,000 pounds total weight. So that's very light for a semi truck. And so it's incredibly important that you be careful of those wind speeds, and you watch and you monitor that, and you talk it through with Nate or I if you have any kind of question. If you are driving in winds that are a little bit high, slow down. It's the faster you're traveling in high wind conditions, the more likely you are to either be blown over or to be moved around along the road in a dangerous way. So, speed is another one of those things that can, lower speed can be your friend. Then again, kind of going back to just general winter driving conditions, extend those following distances, at least 6 seconds. And then for every additional hazard you have above that, add another second. So if wind is on there, add another second. If it's also snowy, add another second. It's always good to have extra following distance. It gives you more flexibility in how you maneuver and how you can be defensive. And then as always, be attentive. Watch far out in front of you. Make sure you're checking your side mirrors on a regular basis. And then also in the wintertime, it's extra important to do an extra thorough pre-trip. Make sure those tires are in good condition. Make sure everything else, you're holding air. There's just a lot of things that cold weather affects on trucks, and so make sure you're doing that good pre-trip. One thing that I also recommend, anytime in the winter especially, you should be doing this all year round, but wintertime, you really got to pay attention to this. When Nate and I book loads for you, we are also monitoring the weather, but you as a driver, it's also your responsibility to monitor it as well. So whether you're using the monitoring locations that I provide and I share with you, or some of your own, or a combination of the two, make sure you're watching that. And the second you get booked on a load that you think is going to be taking you through a bad area, start monitoring that weather, watching the trends, seeing what's going on. And there may be situations where we can and we should alter our route to avoid bad weather conditions. So just keep your eye on that. Don't be afraid to talk it through with Nate and I. All right, transitioning. I want to talk a little bit about spatial awareness. Again, it's another topic that I talk about on a regular basis. And a big part of this is because our most common mishaps are due to spatial awareness, not being aware of what's going on around us. And it's especially prominent in slow speed situations, like you're at a receiver, you're at a shipper, you're at a truck stop, rest stop, something like that, where you're not driving very fast. It gets really easy to be complacent, but it just changes how you need to be aware. How you pay attention is very important, and you have to adjust for different situations. When you're driving down the freeway, your primary focus is on what's going on in front of you, but you're checking your mirrors every few seconds on a very regular basis. When you're in a truck stop, or you're, especially when you're backing into an area, you need to adjust that focus, adjust that awareness of what's going on around you. So now you're probably watching what's going on in your mirrors more, or at least as much as what's going on in front of you. You need to be checking those mirrors regularly. And if you're in an extra tight spot, you may need to slow your speed down even more so that you can be checking, your front, your sides, your back on a very regular basis. You may only be moving a little bit at a time before you stop and are checking all those three areas again. So just be aware of that. So again, be safe, After you've watched this video, shoot me an email or a text message or give me a phone call and share something that you like to do, whether it's in winter driving conditions or that spatial awareness or even being safe on the trailer. Give me one thing that you really like to do. And if you have any questions, give me a call. Appreciate you being safe. Appreciate all you do.